Welcome to the first official Aalto ES Fireside Chat. Fireside Chat is a concept where old grandpas, uncles tell war stories and share their secrets. I don't have to talk about myself because I'm just the moderator, so that's why I'm asking Petteri to tell a short story about yourself and during your last 7 days.
Okay. So about the last 7 days. If I just summarize what I am in a couple of sentences, I'm an investor in Lifeline Ventures. So we invest in very early stage health, web and games companies, B2C companies mainly. Actually, all of them are B2C companies, at least on the web and games side. So what is this? Actually, my last 7 days have been pretty typical. So last week I was in the Valley with the founder of Games Made Me, which is one of our latest investments, and an HTML5 game, cross-browser game company that we incubated, and we met with local investors, angel investors that we know, and then bigger ones like Axel and others.
Did you get any money?
No, we went looking for money at the moment. We just said that we'll be back with later, and then we back with us. I've been visiting a couple of bigger institutions, looking for funding. Capital for our fund, like a standard fund, and I've been, of course, visiting our entrepreneurs. I've been meeting with 3 investors who want to invest in our portfolio companies, 2 portfolio companies, and preparing for 1 board meeting. And tomorrow I'm in UK in a board meeting. So that's pretty much it. Very typical 7 days, I would say.
So do you fly business class or do you fly economy?
I don't even sleep in a hotel if I can avoid it. So I don't remember when I don't know if I've ever flown business class with company money. I've done it a few times with my own money, but even at Google I couldn't do it. Although I could have, I just felt so bad about it. Yeah, that's right.
That was a good one.
Yeah, I said I feel bad about those bad chairs in business class. I have to lay myself down.
Wili, who are you and what's your 7 days been?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Wili Miettinen. I'm a serial entrepreneur. My background's in a company called Hybrid Graphics, which we sold a couple of years ago to NVIDIA. Now I'm one of the founders and the CEO of a company called Microtask. As a mentor, advisor, board member or investor. The other company I've been working quite a bit with is another crowdsourcing technology company called Transfluent. Last 7 days, spent a couple of days with our whole team. We're a very virtual team, so we have 17 people at Microtask, and we all live in different cities. So we had most of the people in Hämeenlinna for an off-site. Like we have two offices here in Finland, Helsinki and Tampere, so we thought it would be a nice neutral ground in between. And spent a couple of days with them, then just drove back and forth to Mindtrek in Tampere, where there's a pitching competition for a couple of startups, and it was a good trip back and forth. We of the 3 prizes they gave, we got 1 for Transfluent and 1 for Microtask, and the third one went to a startup sauna alumni. So overall a very good trip. And then I've spent the whole day today in a board meeting. Our Microtask investors flew into Helsinki, and the big thing I've been spending most of my time is that we've been moving the company away from Helsinki, moving it to the States, which is pretty much what I tell most of the startups over here to do. And tomorrow, Ape and I will be going to Tallinn.
Tallinn.
They have a very intriguing event called Startups Meet Stand-Up. So it's stand-up comedians and startup entrepreneurs.
We don't know whether we're the comedians or the startups.
Yeah, I'm more of a sit-down comedian. So
yeah. So First of all, we need to have some real fire here if we don't close the big door. That's the first thing. Could somebody, Will Cardwell, are you capable of closing the big door because it's freezing? Secondly, my name is Aape Pohjavirta and I'm currently in transition. I am in transition.
Lost in transition.
Yeah, lost. I hope not. I have this project called Ympyrä. I had this, and it's M-Learning, and it's probably going to be renamed and rebranded. And I'm sort of like, I left the chair of the CEO a couple of weeks back. So I'm currently working on how to. And this is an interesting thing because you both guys are like, this is a business model discussion. You both guys are investors. So I'm currently faced with a problem that you probably haven't had because you have solved the problem because I'm a serial failure and you're serial successes. And not serial, don't piss in my cornflakes. The Petteri, what would you say if somebody approaches you with an idea that you know is going to be a winner but has no business model? What do you say today? Somebody speaks in the fire.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, of course, the market needs to be there, so that it should be pretty clear that somebody is spending on that market. So if there's no market, then even a great idea is probably wouldn't get us excited. But I mean, in most of the cases when we invest, the company doesn't have a business model. Like some game companies, for example, have 4 or 5 different business models that they will select from, so that's pretty easy situation. But many other companies don't have anything. They don't have any clue of the business
Have
model.
you heard this kind of talk before? Sorry to interrupt, but this is the investor Petteri Koponen talking, isn't it? This is like and now this fireside chat is about you, the men behind the success and in front of the live audience. What made you become an investor?
I don't know. I actually, it's mainly a lifestyle decision, I would say. Like, I usually get bored pretty quickly. So I even got bored at Chaiku. It was only a bit more than a year that I worked there, and that's a very long period. So in this job, I won't get bored, and I'm usually also a bottleneck because I'm a bit lazy, and in this job, I'm not a bottleneck because the entrepreneurs kind of execute all the time, and I just kind of provide input there. So the kind of train goes on, and the speed is fast, and I only kind of just push it every now and then. It's very different as if you are a startup founder, because then you by definition you are kind of driving the train, and if you stop it, kind of, if you quit, it stops immediately. Though if you are lazy, it stops immediately.
I'm just wondering, Petteri, because we're telling everyone that these lifestyle companies and lifestyle startups are all bad, and we want to go for high growth companies, and you are showing the example by running a lifestyle VC fund.
Yeah, that's right. It's in a different situation, like running a really aggressive startup could be a lifestyle decision as well. So I'm saying that VCs sometimes talk too negatively about lifestyle businesses. I mean, with the lifestyle business, I mean a business that's kind of tailored to your lifestyle. It doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to have like very low level of ambition. Like our ambition is pretty high, I would say.
That's an interesting combination, being lazy, fast, you get bored fast, and your ambition level is high. That sounds like really intriguing. You see a shrink often?
No, there's not that many jobs that you can kind of combine those three, but this is one, so.
So, Wili, why did and how, what drove you to become an investor?
Okay, I'll keep this on. To me, it's more of a, I would say something between a hobby and a calling, rather than a. My day job is running a company, and that's what I do for a living, and hopefully will be doing for as long as I have energy and until I become old and lazy like Petteri, and
With a high ambition level.
exactly.
Now, before we get bored with each other, I understood that there was some question that somebody had posted on Twitter or somewhere, and the idea with the fireside chat is that you are actually invited to join us. There's even a seat for the one who is least active in the discussion. So, in order to avoid the boring moment or the embarrassing moment for someone having to come here, is there anything that you would like to hear about, or about life behind the scenes, or about how it feels to sell your company to Google? Now, you have to remember, one guy has done what most of the people haven't done and will not be able to do, performed the exit to Google, where Google actually bought a company for money. And the other guy, he's doing crowdsourcing. So he's into building a new type of slavery, and the other guy sold anything that he had built to the guys who are not evil. So it's an intriguing combination, isn't it? Yeah.
So what was your first reaction when you heard that Google took the deal? Did you like dance or call your mother?
I don't know, the process had lasted already several months before that, so I didn't kind of celebrate that much. I usually don't celebrate at these moments at all. Like when I sold shares of my first company, I just drank one beer. So it's that was about the same. I mean, it's somehow I just don't feel so strongly about. It's more like the trip than the actual kind of single event that happens. But what I can tell, that I told my wife that if we do the deal, then I live in Finland, like arrange things in Finland first, like 3 or 4 months, and then I move to the Valley, and because I was supposed to move to the Valley and then to London. So I then the Google head of M&A called me and said that now it's signed, and so on, and kind of congratulated, and then I asked, like, so what about the timing? I remember he said that it's Thursday now, so you don't need to leave tomorrow, so leave to Silicon Valley on Monday. So that it wasn't very nice to I had been busy with the deal for many months, like not, and with the business also, so I hadn't been at home that much. And I said that in 5 days I'm gone, and we were renovating our house at the moment, so it was a bit hardish to say, but she took it well. So
Now, Willie, what was your first reaction when you heard that Jaiku had been sold to Google? Your, yeah. Good. That was a good. Yeah. What was your first reaction?
I guess someone tweeted about it, so.
Was there Twitter already back then? Yeah. Now, really, what was your first reaction?
I guess my first reaction was, and I'm here to open my, not closet, but open my heart and at the fireside chat, and I guess my first feeling was that I'm the same that I'm always blaming the other Finns of doing, which was, damn, those guys sold too early. They could have grown into something really big. And that reaction lasted for like 2 seconds, and then I started actually thinking what must have happened, and I still don't have the whole story. I mean, you have to tell it one day, but
wasn't this today? Petteri, you know.
by the way, it shouldn't be such a big deal. Like these kind of deals happen every day, almost, like in the Valley. So we shouldn't think. I mean, and it's probably going to be much more common here. I think I think like in a couple of years, like this kind of truly size deals will be discussed. Like not if Google or Microsoft or whoever does a smallish acquisition here, but rather that somebody IPOs or does something really, really big.
Well, somebody could say that when Christopher Columbus found this place called whatever, and he came back and said, well, it's just a couple of islands and there's nothing much happening there. So there's always the pioneership and doing, establishing something, and looking at the way Google has expanded, we should be looking at how to be able to commercially exploit the Google ecosystem. But that's just, I think that's another story, and I think that is for politicians, and today now with the fire burning one side, where's my fire? Any other things that the audience would like to discuss with the guys, or should we just continue rambling about Wili? When did you come up with the idea of digital slavery?
I first ran into this issue back in I think '07. Was just after I had left NVIDIA. I'd realized that I'm not a corporate kind of a guy. Need to set up something new, and I was looking for new startup ideas. And one of them came from an actual need, which was tagging of photography. I'm like a semi-professional photographer. I have hundreds of thousands of photos on my hard drives somewhere there. I'm never going to be able to find most of the photos because they haven't been tagged, and I realized that I need them tagged. I don't have the time and energy to do that. I would love to outsource that to someone on the internet, but there were just no means to do that. Even though like everything that's, all the components of the ecosystem are there. Like the photos are already in a digital format. I have a credit card, my computer is still connected to the internet. There's people connected to the internet, so it ought to be possible. And I started exploring the whole space, and here we are.
Okay. Wili, how is it different kind of running a startup now than at the hybrid times? Like you are all very experienced, so is it different?
It's a completely different game. I mean, it's back then. The one thing we had back then was time. We had years and years and years of time to code really cool stuff and to perfect things without having to worry about pretty much anything. And these days, if you're creating a startup here in Finland, let's say a web startup, you are competing globally. You're competing from day one against the smartest guys in Silicon Valley, smartest guys in Israel, any other place. And so you have to innovate and execute at a speed which is just completely crazy. And that's like, for example, at my current company, of the management team, I'm the youngest one. I'm 36. The other guys are like late 30s, early 40s. There's no way we can actually compete as an internet company against the current generation. So we really pushed the whole thing into an enterprise sales action. And our sales guys are like 50 to 60-year-old guys wearing suits and ties, who have gone to all the right schools, who go to the right country clubs, who have the customers' names in their Rolodex. And that's what the 20-year-old Silicon Valley kids can't really directly compete against.
Who has a Twitter account they actively use? Okay, this is good. An interesting thing happened. A friend of mine, Jonathan McDonald, was doing a TEDx in London. I think it was a year ago, and it was, youngsters, youth. And he said that, these are the things that we middle-aged men keep on tweeting about. And nobody in that age group in the UK tweets. Teenagers don't tweet. So who is this Jaikur? If you think of Jaiku or Twitter, the microblogger, this generation, these people who are competing against us, this generation Y, or like Mikko Puhakka says, the generation Swedish O, the A with a little small top because of the lamp stack, Scandinavian heritage of internet, Web 2.0, 3.0, the Swedish O generation. What are they made of? What are these people made of? And what could we learn, and how do we learn from them? We old beards with gray beard. And what should we, and what could we learn? And what we could teach them, I think the question is more, how do you see them working in your companies or in your organizations? How can you use these Aalto enterprise, ES, whatever, you know, how do you build societies that have these multiple generations in a working group? Is there something that is happening that is new or that is revolutionary, or is this just something that has always happened, generation switching?
I think actually the younger generation, whatever letter it's named after, it's closer to what we were in 90s than yeah, but it's kind of I remember like the younger generations kind of after like the 2000 generations, whatever they were prioritizing really heavily like free time and hobbies and so on. So I mean I've seen in many companies problems because of that, because the commitment to work has been relatively low and a weak commitment, and then they're just working enough to fund their hobbies. And of course in a startup that's probably not the ideal situation, but like the younger generation is now looking at the valley and they well, this is an old story here at Aaltoes, but they kind of also take the working habits from there, like working really hard on 20 hours a day and iterating fast and being ambitious. So that's how I remember that we did it, like we just worked. Like I remember many times I didn't sleep in 2 nights in a row and just had to complete whatever I started and work really hard. Not in a very smart manner, but really hard.
This is the lazy guy, remember the lazy guy. I wonder what the not lazy guys are like.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm seeing the same now, and it really is a big difference. There were 10 years when nobody, like the younger generations, were not, on average, were not that interested in work.
Yeah, and there could be some interesting social factors at play as well, because also like the mid-90s generation, many of the tech companies were started out from a hobbyist scene, the demo scene, and so people were friends. They had worked and played together, built things together, and then they started building startups out of that. And then now we have a similar kind of a thing with the whole Aalto ES movement and so forth, where there's a huge family of people working together. And also I think another factor is that the current young generation, they have absolutely no fear whatsoever. Kind of like reminds me of the whole snowboarding scene and so forth. It's so the older you are, the more cynical you become, and you start to fear. You see how the world exactly how the world actually works, and you start to you're not able to come with such big, bold ideas. And these guys are mainly fearless because they're largely clueless. I don't know. I know it's a harsh way of putting it.
Now this is a provocative thing, and the guys in the audience who have had a dream and had a vision, please raise your arm. Who has had a dream or a vision? Ever? Now hands up. Who has had a dream? Henkka. Have you had a dream, a vision? Thank you. So everybody has had one. Now, how many of you have actually gone out and executed that dream? Wow. That's awesome. How many of you are going to have yet another dream? I had to do one thing. Martin Luther King Jr., who is well respected, he had this speech, I have a dream. I have a dream. And I remembered parts of the speech, but last night, I had to watch the whole speech. And you should do it. You should actually go through the 17.5 minutes of a speech where he declares not his dream, but the dream of everybody. And that's something I think that we should have, and I would like to pose a question to the audience. How would you like to have Wili articulate or Petteri to articulate your dream? So if you would be kind enough and just stand up and say and articulate your next dream or your current dream. Please start here with our friend who is going to leave us here in a couple of days.
I'm sitting here next to Aaltoes.
Yeah. One of the more casual dreams was when I was visiting Vienna, I saw the beautiful city, and there's a vision to start some kind of organization to preserve all the old architecture, classic building, to understand how they thought of these beautiful things in the first place. Not just in 100 years, we only have the pictures, we want to reverse engineer how they build them in the first place.
Now,
There's more where that came from.
yeah, this is, thank you. Yeah. No, thank you. I just wanted to give you a sample of everybody says, people tend to say that now when everything is digital, it's easy to come up with new ideas and new entrepreneurship and new winners, and there's people who are poised for success and people who are poised for failure. I think that societies have always been built in a way that enables lots of people to have dreams, and the older the cynical or the more experienced people get, the more fearsome they grow. Thus, they do not execute their dreams. They drink wine and smoke stuff, and then they see these dreams and they. Now, sorry, lots of people.
That's only you.
Some people say that now with digitalization of almost everything on the planet, lives and things will definitely change. There's talk about planet Earth 3.0, and I think that Microtask, you should have an sort of like insight, Willi, through your eyes. Do you see like world becoming one and being able to create something new with these new tools and new opportunities? Or are we sticking to old cumbersome ways of thinking and executing the dreams which result in nobody actually, articulating their own dream? Difficult question. Yeah.
That's my dream as well.
Willi, do you see people in India or desolate places in societies where the money that we spend on one taxi ride to the airport, that's 50 euros, you have families who live a year with that same amount of money? Digital work could include all of these people into one society. Do you see this happening? Do you believe this happening?
It will happen, of course. I mean, the establishment, the man, the big corporations, they of course want to maintain more or less the status quo. And it's the job of the entrepreneurs to disrupt that status quo and come up with new ideas to get rid of those old corporations and grow our little startups to kind of like what Google's done over the last 50 years. And hopefully in a few years' time there will be loads of smaller companies completely challenging what they're doing.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree that it's so much easier now to disrupt things. And sometimes disrupting means really like destroying value by doing things in a more clever way, like in a different way, or faster, smarter, cheaper, and so on, like Craigslist did for local newspapers. And sometimes it's kind of painful because you can destroy even like industries that can work really well. I mean, there's people employed there and they're happy and so on. So there can be huge destructions, but in the long run, probably things are more efficient. And I think like if I would found a startup, I would probably look for something very disruptive. It's just pretty cool to work on something, and that's something that I see nowadays. For a short period of time and
not having to work too much because he's a lazy guy. Yeah.
And by the way, nowadays I see that it's changing a bit, but like this Web 2.0 thing that started maybe 5 years ago made people to look for kind of Me Too ideas. If you only believe in this, like do something really fast and fail fast and so on, then people tend to think that it means you need to do something simple, but you can also do something, try to disrupt and do something big in the same way. That's just my warning, that if you start doing something that's really small and easy, it's probably not like what startups are really designed for. They are kind of designed to do something disruptive.
And then startup generators, Willi, you should tell the story about, like, you have publicly already told the story how stupid you can be once you make the money with you remember the throwing the ball in the air and world globe and, doing like this and then traveling to that place.
Duh.
I remember Willi telling this story. They had sold this company. They had this planet Earth thing that is called and then you throw it and you have this pen or somebody and then
the Random Traveler Society. Yeah.
Now, this is just to show you that people who seem very proper and professional and tend to sort of like work on things in a process kind of fashion really show an example of how human you can be. The story with the society, Random Traveler Society, how we came up with it.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, I'll do a brief version, the Fireside version. So basically, me and a couple of Finnish entrepreneurs and a couple of Silicon Valley boys, we got together something like 5 years ago, started thinking about where do we want to travel next, and we all like really, really enthusiastic travelers, being all over the place, and we had a really hard time figuring out where we want to go next because someone had always been at a place that was named, so we came up with this really clever idea that we're just going to have an inflatable globe, and we're going to throw that in the air and hit that with a pen, and then we promise that we're going to go there for a weekend and have a little seminar like this heart-to-heart fireside chat going on for 2 days. And the problem, of course, that we can end up hitting places like Baghdad or Afghanistan or something like that. The rule was that we are going to meet at the bar closest to the point of the pen. So 80% of the surface of planet Earth is covered with water, so it's extremely likely that we end up on a lonely island somewhere. And we've now done this, I think, 5 or 6 times, and we've ended up into Greenland, check. We've ended up into Chatham Islands that's 800 kilometers east of New Zealand. We've ended up on a research station in Antarctica. The Argentinian guys actually have a little bar there, so we had to go there. It took us 19 days to get there and back. And interestingly enough, the business plan of Microtask is written on an icebreaker to Antarctica. So we sat like in a cabin for 19 days and wrote the original business plan. Yeah, we did, and I actually this
How
is
boring.
I know. Oh, I'm such a lazy guy that I could never put a business. No, actually, that's something where I think our opinions will differ a bit. I'm not sure if they actually differ, but there's this modern school that says that you should never go and write a traditional business plan. You should be able to express your idea in 10 or 12 slides, and that's it. However, I think that writing a business plan is if you're not ready to do those 12 slides, then writing a business plan is an excellent exercise because it forces you to, when you're telling your lies on paper, I mean, you're looking at them and realizing how futile it all sounds. And you cringe when you're looking at the text. And that forces you to work through the idea until you get it to a point that you can boil it down to 12 slides. And after that, you should just throw the business plan away and show
put it
those
into the
12 slides.
fireplace, like
Yeah.
burn it. Yeah. So what's next for you guys? What do you plan on doing before Christmas?
Well, I'm spending the whole fall in the States helping, taking basically 2 companies over there to both Microtask and Transfluent. And I'll show my face here at a couple of Aalto events and Slush and a few other things. But apart from that, I'll be in the US.
And Petteri?
So we see if we can raise a fund that we've been working now for several months as a side job to this early stage investment. And I think we continue doing we'll probably do a couple of experiments with Lifeline, like maybe to see how incubation works. We probably like, we had this hacker in residence, Teemu Ikonen, who is now one of the co-founders of this Games Made Me, the HTML5 company. So we probably like experiment with that model a bit. It worked really well, and it was a lot of fun. I think that's mainly, I mean, these experiments, fun, and then of course the same old thing, working with startups, making a bit more investments. Probably that.
Now, who of you in the audience have this image of now both Petteri and Wili being active members of the so-called VC community here, that they embrace the idea that they wake up in the morning and they go into the office and they wait there for your great ideas to come to them and say, hey, let's do this. Let's change the world. So, now, guys, you have to be a bit on the, or is it so that there's so much good stuff in your pipeline that you don't have to worry about anything in this audience passing you by? Or how do you catch the pulse or stay on the pulse of this as you are apparently busy with your stuff?
Well, I do spend quite a bit of my time drinking beer with this community, so it's an excellent way to keep
Where's
your
the
finger
beer?
at the pulse. Yeah, I'm wondering about that.
Yeah, we're not doing like many of the traditional investors spend a lot of time managing the deal flow and going to all kinds of events. So we try to do things differently. Like I rarely go to any conference or where I would meet people, and so we try to help the entrepreneurs, and when we have ideas, we proactively contact them, and then I'm, of course, coaching a lot of companies that we're never gonna invest in. And in that way, I think we kind of active members of the entrepreneur community more than active members of the VC community. So we pretty much automatically kind of get some kind of visibility to all the good things happening. If somebody doesn't want to show us deals, then of course we wouldn't get in them, or ideas we wouldn't get in those deals anyway. So it's more, I think this was our initial assumption, that we spend time helping entrepreneurs rather than sourcing for deal flow. It's by the way, it's extremely boring work to just go through emails and business plans and presentations. So we kind of just use our intuition and try to find the interesting cases and then start working with the entrepreneurs, and maybe later we do an investment if there's a mutual understanding on that.
And it's actually much easier to do that by looking for interesting people rather than interesting ideas.
Yeah. So are you sort of like do you represent the so-called super angels or in Finnish format?
No, I wouldn't say. I don't know if there's a category of we just do things our way. I mean, super angel would sound a bit arrogant. Like we are the only super angels in Finland. It doesn't sound very good.
I would guess that Risto Siilasmaa falls into that category, and that's about it.
Yeah, he's like he's an angel who does VC-sized investments. We do angel-sized investments.
Now, any of you guys, anybody want to pitch an idea here and now? Looking for funding, okay?
Okay, I'm from China originally, and I learned to speak English within a very short period of time. Now I would like to develop a product that people can use and learn English automatically from the web. And there's 100 million people who want to learn.
So what is a very short time? Are we talking about hours or days or maybe months?
If you do a few hours a day within 30 days or 90 days, but different people get different results. It's like fashion shows. You see the top people, but you make money from the bottom.
That was pretty interesting. How much money do you need? I got 4 euros in my pocket. you need to move to Finland. We have great examples of that. Anybody else have an idea you would like to pitch or try out here?
First, I have to say one thing. Like normally, like pitching is not what we look for. There's a kind of the whole structure is kind of strange that somebody, I want to pitch to you. I mean, I don't know, what do you feel if somebody says that, could you please hear my pitch or?
Well, I think it's the reason why a lot of the activities of Aalto, of other entrepreneurship societies, of how we teach startups these days in Finland is focused so much on pitching is because we're like so bad, like Finns are so bad at expressing any ideas whatsoever. So you start up by looking at the soles of your shoes, and we're just trying to get Finns to communicate at all. I think that once we reach that minimum skill level, like collectively, we forget about this whole pitching thing.
Yeah, I think what we should do is of course pitching is useful, but that's only for maybe for a couple of times or 4 times in your startup. With one startup you need to pitch, actually. So I mean, what we should do is to learn to teach people how to discuss their idea. That's kind of, hey, I have this idea, and then the discussion starts. That's where the deals are closed. They're not usually closed due to a very good pitch. And if somebody kind of sits at the coffee table and start pitching, it actually sounds, the situation is pretty awkward, actually. Like, it's not the normal conversation that you start like just pitching really aggressively.
I hate the concept of pitching, the name pitching, because pitching should be about throwing a ball or throwing beer into a pitcher and drinking, enjoying that pitcher. But I think that what we Finns, also other startups, they have difficulty and challenge in explaining what they are about. There are words and concepts like value proposition. I don't know. I started working with the U.S. in the late '80s in the digital industry, and value proposition was a word that got thrown into my face by Apple in '89, and I was like, what is value proposition? And then the concept of like serendipity. What does it mean? All Americans who come from Silicon Valley, in all of their slides, there's this serendipity, and I was like, I had to go, I'm pretty fluent in English, and I had to go, so it is something that just happens. Or Wili, how do you explain serendipity? Exactly. Now look at the guy's face, and still if you go to all of these, fancy guys do their slideshows, serendipity is something that we should aim for. So, but explaining, and here is a great example of a person from China. This is something that I love about, being still allowed to live on this planet. Exchange of international ideas, and I think that is very important. Us Finns to be thrown into a place where we have to communicate about what we should do about our dreams. And Henkka, you wanna articulate your dream.
Well, I was going to say that now here in Finland we have this whole startup community, and we have some politicians starting startup clubs in our government and stuff like that. And we have really talented language-speaking people who have gone to real schools, big schools, blah, blah, blah. Now, we're lacking, like, for example, maybe investors or something like that from Finland. How do we make that startup hub? How do we build a startup hub into Finland? What's lacking from us? What are we not getting? Or how can every one of us in the audience influence that?
I think it would be nice to get more investors, and especially angel investors. But in the end, I've been preaching this maybe even too much, but in the end it's all about startups. Like, I don't know if I'm fair, but I'm saying that I haven't seen a good startup not to get funded. And of course, good is what I think is good. So it may be that I'm completely wrong, and actually good startups and or the most promising startups have never gotten funded. But basically, like by definition, a good startup eventually gets funded. Like if it doesn't, then either the idea is bad or the team is bad, because if you can't sell a good idea, then you are not a good entrepreneur. I think in the Valley, for example, it's easier because if you lack some skills, you can find that easier. But in theory, like if you have a skilled small team and a good idea, you will get funded. I mean, it's just a matter of valuation, but eventually you will get money from somebody. So that's why we only need, the most important thing is that we need just more startups and more ambitious startups that aim really high. So that's basically the only thing. And that's why kind of Aaltoes, the kind of changing the culture is so important, but because it increases the number of startups.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty straightforward game of numbers, in the sense that if we get more high-quality startups, we are going to get more more big exits. Big exits automatically will attract foreign investors here.
Yeah, yeah. And there was a comment. For example, like Israel has been pretty successful, and it's not a big country, and it's very remote, and they have all kinds of problems that we don't even have here, and some advantages that we don't have. But on kind of basically with the right attitude and the right kind of, I don't know, right skill sets and whatever. I mean, it's possible to any place in the world could be a startup hub.
Do you mean as a place, like geographically, or a workplace, or? Yeah, in the U.S., Silicon Valley is definitely still the king. The other place where there's a lot of action right now is New York City. I mean, it wasn't anything like in the startup scene 5 years ago, and now it's blooming, and there's an enormous amount of investment capital going there, and a good scene. In the rest of the world, Shanghai, definitely, I mean, if you want to go for something where there's a lot of action. And I think it would be interesting to actually spend time more time in Herzliya, in the like Tel Aviv Israeli scene. I mean, those guys are just crazy.
And if you look at sort of like emerging markets, Cape Town, definitely go there. Mexico City, very interesting. Colombia, especially because you have access to U.S. funding, subsidized, heavily subsidized, because of the fact that they want to exchange or develop surrounding society.
In Europe, Berlin, definitely. I mean, there's more happening in Berlin.
And Helsinki, or Espoo, in fact, Espoo.
Yeah, so I mean, the easiest way probably, I mean, if you don't have an idea for a startup, and by the way, I think it's extremely hard to force an idea. I've tried it maybe sometimes. I had 1 year when I wasn't actively involved in any company. So I was looking for an idea, and I didn't get a good one. And I almost like full-time thought about startup ideas. So it tells something about me, but also something about the fact that it's very hard to just force yourself to have a great idea. And then, so if you don't have an idea that you would like to start working, or if you want some more experience, then like joining a semi-mature startup or startup that has experienced founders is probably the best way to get going. And good founders actually happily recruit this kind of people that say that, okay, my own dream is to have my own startup, but I work for you for 3 years or something like that. They don't mind that. I used to think that I don't want to take this employee because he's or she is going to leave anyway, but it's actually a good idea to just have benefit from that person and that energy for some years, and then he or she leaves.
Yeah, in Silicon Valley, the situation already is that people who are joining your company there are quite likely to leave within 6 months. So if you're going to get someone for 3 years, I mean, you should be just happy.
But
Back there was a question. I think in almost all the cases, the old saying is true that you don't sell a company, somebody buys it. I mean, it's very hard to go and sell a startup. But
Yeah.
you can probably make it a bit easier by partnering with right people and doing PR and that kind of things. But if you really go and try to sell the startup, it's very, very hard.
And you're right, you can make the company more sellable, but company exits are most often, they happen because of some kind of a change in the market itself. So typically, market becomes more mature, the established big players go and buy all the small guys, get their best people, get their IP and so forth. That can happen like in the case of Hybrid and the market we were in, which was mobile graphics, it all happened in 2 months. That whole market, like, all the small players, all the small companies were acquired within 2 months.
Yeah, the same happened on larger scale with kind of map, this kind of geo with Teleatlas and Navtec and kind of others. Like just the changes can be really fast. But I mean, the easiest way to get acquired is just to build a great company that's really ambitious. And I think like it feels like personally when you start selling it, you start kind of destroying. When your employees know that you are selling the company, kind of the clock starts ticking, and if you don't do it really fast, then it's very likely to kind of destroy the company. Emotionally it's very hard, and then people start calculating how rich they are. And they can't really focus on building the business, and everyone starts feeling anxiety. It's very destructive.
And that's one of the things I think we in Finland should be looking at the Swedish-speaking minority in sort of like what is happening, because we Finnish-speaking Finns tend to say that they have the old money, they have more wealth, but they also have a more humane or sarcastic approach towards entrepreneurship. You know, you fail, you go bankrupt, they say, no man inte gör det något, och supa, ta en supa, they take a couple of crayfish extra and they keep on trying. So failure is good, and one thing that we don't in Finland, what we don't have is the polarization of the society. We are still a very, like, this is not like Mexico City where you have Mr. Slim and then the others. So it's like that polarization effect is missing, and I think that those are also the values on which to build the startup hub that everybody here is talking so furiously about. One thing I learned during the summer, because I need to keep my brain in shape by learning one new thing every day and repeating them endlessly, is that the dark Middle Ages of Europe ended by one de Medici saying that the money doesn't help unless he makes money work. So he built a house in Rome and invited all the brightest minds of that, scene, including Galileo Galilei, Leonardo da Vinci, and the likes. That whole, the best of the best, the creme de la creme of the European science world and arts world, were able to reside in that one house in Rome. And there's a German guy who used to be CIO of Telecom, who is now building a similar club in Marrakesh, a club of Marrakesh. And I'm going there now in November to see, I don't know why I'm invited, but I'm going there to see what kind of people he's gathering, because he believes that the values of the digital society are going to be so different from the values of the capitalistic or industrialized society. And this value change is the big disruption. And we Finns, as a tasteless, country that nobody knows of on the planet, nobody's afraid of the Finns, we could have a chance there. Don't laugh. Hey, nobody knows who Finns are. Wherever you, yeah, there's a question.
Yeah, like when you got the acquisition offer, did you have more than one offer on the table, and it is actually for both of you? And on the other hand, would there have been some kind of enough venture capital for you to continue rather than selling? Like what amount would have been enough?
Well, basically, I mean, we were raising a round, so we had a couple of VCs who wanted to leave term sheets, which is kind of and we had already agreed on the terms. So it would have been pretty easy to, I don't remember how big a round we were looking for, maybe like 5 or 6 million euros at that point, and we had 7 employees with low salaries, so it would have been enough for some time, some months. And we had discussions with, I think, 3 or 4 companies were interested in acquiring, but kind of relatively early we just wanted to discuss with Google, and the team only, at that point they were interested in working there, so it was also it wasn't just money or something like that, but really that it sounded like a nice alternative at the point to work. Back then I think Google was the hottest company in that space, and now probably Facebook is clearly more interesting, but back then it was really interesting place to be at.
In our case, the potential buyers, they were all about 100 times bigger than we were. We were 45 people. There were like 4,000, 5,000 person companies. So in order to go and really challenge them, to really disrupt what they are doing, the amount of venture capital we would have needed would have been significant. We would have had to raise 40, 50 million euros back in 2006, an impossible proposal back then. When we got the term sheet on the table, the very first term sheet that came from actually from another potential buyer, and that of course triggered the buying mode that Petteri was talking about earlier. So we mentally made the decision that yeah, we're for sale. We're going to sell the company. After which, of course, we very quickly went and got some other term sheets, and eventually ended up having like twice the original valuation, which was good. But it's important to understand that once you go into this, we're going to sell the company mode. That's your like best before date. You've reached your best before date in a way. The milk is getting sour, so you gotta move fast at that point.
You need to sell the company when somebody believes in you more than you do. So that's kind of the moment actually. And I have to tell a funny story, I mean, about entrepreneurs. There's one very small company, less than 5 employees, and we visited some potential investors, some partners and so on in the US, and kind of the industry giant heard about like the #1 company in that space with 5,000-6,000 employees and a lot of revenue and profits, heard about the CEO being in the town, and they had obviously tracked the company already, so they kind of invited him to visit, and he said that, oh, I'm leaving back to Finland tomorrow, so I don't have time probably, and let's do it another time. So they just insisted. So it was pretty obvious what they had in mind, and we did this. We visited them and then discussed the technology and everything, and the kind of there was like CTO and head of consumer and everything in the same room and an acquisition person and so on, and then
That's a dead giveaway.
Yeah, so that's kind of a giveaway. But the entrepreneur just wanted to build something bigger, and he understood that even the company would probably in a year or 2 years or 3 years it would be much more valuable also to the potential acquirer. But the funny thing was that then they kind of insisted and said that okay, but if we understand you, but if we could ask like what would be your price, and I think back then they had 3 employees. So the CEO said, and he was dead serious, like okay, we're not greedy. So it's $500 million. And the acquisition person just wrote it down. and so I don't know if he was he was joking, but not like 100%. So I think that's a good attitude from a Finnish entrepreneur, and knowing that whoever was in the room. And so kind of that was handled then. Then they just forgot it, and they continue executing, and they focus on the really tiny problems and big problems that they need to solve, but they are not kind of thinking that why didn't we sell, or who will acquire, and how do we increase our value to get a better acquisition offer. They just focus on executing. I think that's exactly the right attitude.
Yeah, there was yesterday was an interesting post by Claudio Camacho, who was here one of the winning team from Summer of Stardust, where he said that now they have had to start working. That was an interesting post, and you should all claudiocamacho.org.com is his site, but you can find it on through the Twitters and those, where he states that when he was here and when he was doing this pitching and this communicating and developing his idea, he had all the time in the world. He was not, the pressure was set upon himself by himself. He decided the deadlines. Now, when you enter the real world, there's someone else who is starting to dictate what is happening. And I think that relating to and sort of like distracting distilling what you're saying, it is an attitude game. So when you start a startup, it is an attitude thing. You need to put your mind and heart into it. You need to grow on it. When you start executing, you have to go humbly to the customers. You have to get the funding. It's all an attitude thing. And then and I think this was a beautiful phrase, Petteri, by you, when someone else values more than you yourself, then it's time to sell. So that's also an attitude thing. How can you train someone to go through that process and recognize those patterns? And I'm talking this from the mindset of a founder who sits here and says, I have this dream. When is the time for him to let go?
No, I think that's exactly, not just the acquisition part, but that's exactly what we try to do with the founders too. That's probably like, at least what I believe is the biggest value add from people like us, that we can at least give our own opinion. Of course, the founders do whatever they want to do, and they're usually pretty stubborn, and like entrepreneurs usually are. But that's the biggest. But I couldn't say that at this point I would recommend you to sell. It's a decision that somebody needs to do with the team.
I guess that happens to any startup that grows big enough, with the exception of Steve Jobs or someone like that.
Well, he had to leave the company for ample of years, over a decade, before he could return.
I'm kind of before Ari comments, I'll just say that we believe quite a lot in teams where as many original founders would really scale and continue as possible. So nowadays we're looking for that kind of teams where we wouldn't need to change the team, or the company, not we, but the company wouldn't need to change, kind of radically change the founding team, but rather that they would be able to carry on. So we somehow try to imagine if this company would have 500 employees, which founders could still be in the management team of the company. Knowing that founders have some advantages, like Google probably wouldn't hire Sergey Brin nowadays, like if he would be in free, like he wouldn't get a EVP position at Microsoft probably, but since he's a founder, he knows everything, he has a lot of capital, he's super smart, he's really good at Google, but not kind of a person who would get hired in top position in one of the big companies.
Okay, Ari Korhonen is my name, angel investor. I'm asking about after exit, when you were entrepreneur. What happened after exit? You sold your company to the bigger company. How was life after exit?
It was rather painful, actually, in many ways, because trying to take in our case, it was a company of 45 mostly Finnish hackers being incorporated into an American multinational Silicon Valley-based company, and there were a lot of cultural conflicts and so forth. Eventually, those were like now it's I think 5.5 years from that. I mean, it's all of that stuff has been sorted out over the years, but initially it was super painful. And I would say to any CEO, any founder thinking about selling their company that the sales process itself is going to be super painful. It's going to take a number of months. That's bad enough, but like after you've signed and money's been transferred and so forth, that's when the kind of like real pain begins. And one of the things is that you're going to lose some of the people. Some people you'll be working with years and years and years. They're not going to accept the new arrangements. They're not going to feel comfortable in the new environment. So you're going to see a lot of your friends go. It's a sad time, and but of course there's tons of good things to come out of any exit, and of course on a personal level to founders, to investors, but also like the people who are leaving the company. Some of those have capital, some of those have fresh new ideas, and they go and do wonderful things.
I took it as a learning experience because I've never worked in a, well, during my studies I did, but like I've never really worked for a big company. So Google is the only one, like after starting my first company in '97, and I was then a research assistant at the university. So the kind of after '97, Google is the only big company I worked for. So I kind of took it as a learning experience, and they had all kinds of cool engineering courses, for example, that I attended, although I was in product management. So they didn't really kind of directly relate to my job. But it's and another goal actually was that I could get out of the comfort zone, because having spent many years in kind of leadership position, I was becoming some kind of a leader in a negative sense. So kind of that I only kind of visited meetings, like I had 8 meetings a day and I made decisions in meetings, but if I needed to produce something, I just couldn't do it. I was just like making decisions, and my attention span was like maybe 2 minutes. So that's what I learned back at Google, doing kind of much lower level stuff that I had done in maybe 10 years or 8 years. So you should only kind of just think that and I learned completely new things, and things that, like, for example, like corporate politics that I didn't know anything about, but now I do, and it's actually a nice, if you think it's nice to learn those things as well, and some of these things have really benefited us here, that surprisingly. So it's just about the attitude. But my attitude was that, okay, I've sold my company, I'm doing this for business, so it's not my baby, it's my company, and now I try to be as kind of useful for Google as I do. I mean, they paid money, and I'm really happy because of the transaction. So now it's my turn to give, kind of try to give back.
Okay. Now we will have time for one more question. But before that, the final question or comment, before that we do the wraparound. We do understand that there's a future, okay? Everybody has a dream, and these guys and everybody will support us in getting to that dream, making that dream real. A couple of tasks are there. You don't have to pitch. That is a good thing. That's now we can forget about the pitching thing. Second thing, you can be lazy. Third thing, once you make the exit, you know it's going to be really bad, so you don't have to focus on the exit at all. Those things set aside means that and now she's gone, the startup hub of Europe, Espoo / Helsinki, is going to grow and become a really good place. A friendly place where fireside chats are going to be a tradition, where cigars burn if somebody smokes and cognac is being drunk. Okay. Now, after all this, what is the final comment or question?
Well, I explained it super briefly, and I think we should have like the other questions as well, if possible. So that's it's just an idea that you could calculate the kind of the money that the startup or any company actually, but mainly startups, leave at in the ecosystem. So incoming money from investors, whether they are foreign or local, and of course revenues and so on. And then some of the money goes out to, let's say, subcontractors abroad or so on. So in the end, there is like a cash flow, and if you kind of calculate the discounted cash flow, then you have one figure, which is the kind of the money footprint of the company. So that way you could compare any two companies with each other, even though they would be in totally different areas. And you could calculate some like cash footprint forecasts for different kind of companies, and maybe even direct like governmental decisions that, okay, we need these kind of or we invest in these kind of companies because of their high cash footprint and not these kind of in these kind of companies. So that's kind of the idea there, but it's just a word that's the term that's pretty good, I have to say, but I haven't really thought it out.
I just want to point out that we almost managed to get through this whole like fireside chat without ever mentioning government funding.
Yeah, and that was
I was so hoping that you
Sorry about that.
But nobody has mentioned the word that starts with T and ends with the S. We made it. It's historical. Okay. Any comments?
Question? Question about personal experience with the lethargicness. Have you discovered over the years some techniques to extract some productivity even though you feel lethargic?
He's talking about drugs.
I don't know. I'm not a productivity expert, so the only thing that gets me going is a deadline. So I set deadlines, or then I do something interesting. So what I've become better is that balancing like family life and work. So I for example, my rhythm now is that nowadays I try to exercise in the morning, so I'm doing it not as well as I should, but I'm trying to exercise then, so I'm more efficient than during the day, and my conscience is clear. And then I go to work. I usually come back pretty early, so I can spend some time with my daughters, And then when they fall asleep, usually my wife falls asleep right after that, so then I have plenty of time to work. And I only work on funny things or fun things in the evening, so that I know that I'm not hyper efficient, so that I save everything, all the interesting things for late hours. And then I don't know, it's just like some kind of a rhythm that if I follow that, I'm much more efficient than if I do it differently.
The late hours will be from 10 to...
Well, 10 to sometimes very late, but and then I've tried to clean the inbox like in one night. So I go to bed and then I start going through inbox. Sometimes I'm done like at 7 a.m. in the morning. So that's not fun, but it's just a strange habit that I've
He's weird.
created.
He says he's lazy, but he's working his ass off during nights.
Do you sleep?
Yeah, I do. I'm normally, this is just an exception. I do it maybe once a month. These are just like practices that you get.
Okay, now, I think that this is going to be the first event in the history of Finnish high-tech industry where the word of that one institution, the name of that one institution has not been named. Thank you for that, thank you for that, and government funding was mentioned only once. Thank you for that. This historical event will continue now with some socializing, and I need to go to work and you don't, because you can work on the boat in the morning. Thank you guys for being such an active dreamer society, and let's try to make some more dreams accessible by others. Make them, break them, okay? Thank you.
Thanks.